All right, Instagram. Today is a special day. We have two lives in a row. I know I just taught a meditation, but I'm about to go live with my really good friend, Dave Hollis. So it's going to be awesome. So if you're live with me right now, thank you for being here. I'm grateful to see you all again. I missed you. I'm really enjoying these lives, and the meditation is beautiful because I get to teach you and share with you meditation. But these ones are great because I get to talk to my friends. You get to dive into a conversation. Dave's got a new book out. It's called Get Out of Your Own Way. I really recommend getting a copy. So I want to bring him on right now. Here he is, the man himself. Give me 1 second. I'm going to bring him on. I'm just getting one thing for you all. Give me 1 second. Amazing. Give me 1 second. How's it going? Okay, cool. I'm going to invite Dave on in a second, but I want to do this first. I'm going to pin this to the top if I can. Pin comment. There we go. All right, Dave, where are you, man? Let's request to go live. There we go, Mr. Dave. Welcome, Dave, to our live. He's coming in, he's coming in, he's coming in. Waiting for Dave, connecting. It's
Oh my goodness gracious.
How's it going, buddy?
I am well. How are you, Jay?
It's so good to see you, man. It's so good to see you. Are you healthy and safe? How's your family? How's Rachel?
We are healthy. We are safe. We are staying home. We are quarantined just outside of Austin, Texas. And I've stopped personally grooming. So I don't know what else to say other than I'm cutting my own hair. That's part of the quarantine deal, but we are safe. Thanks, buddy. How are you doing?
Your hair looks great. I mean, you look awesome. So I think you did just fine. Everyone, Mr. Dave Hollis. Yeah, I have pinned the link to his new book that we're going to talk about into my top comments. So if you love this conversation, which I know you will, I want you to go and grab a copy of the book. And even if you can't listen to the whole conversation today, go grab a copy of this book. This man's amazing. We got to hang out literally about, which feels like a lifetime ago now, Dave. Like we were together in Puerto Rico. I think, was it 2 months ago now? It feels right.
It's only been like 2 months. It's unbelievable how much the world has changed since we were together.
Literally. So we were together. We've been DMing back and forth, but we got to spend some quality time together. And not only did I fall in love with Dave as a human, I also fell in love with his mind and how he teaches, because it's so powerful. So today I'm going to ask Dave some great questions. If you've got any questions for Dave, tell us as well. We've got Donna saying, hey, handsome men, Donna. We appreciate that. Thank you for making us feel, thank you for making us feel good. Anto Sharp, good to see you as well. So I want you guys to tell me your questions for Dave as well. And then this is going to live in my stories for the next 24 hours. So Dave, your new book, it's called Get Out of Your Own Way. It's already a New York Times bestseller, which is amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
But more importantly, and I want you to tell me this because you and I were both writing books before this happened. Your book came out during this happening. From my reading of your book, I feel like your book is super relevant to right now. Why do you think that your book's so relevant right now in your words? Like, why do you think it's such a powerful place right now, even though you didn't write it for this time?
Yeah. Well, the book is set up as 20 lies, 20 stories that I believe that kept me from being my best self, showing up best for my family, or being the person that I know I can be. And in uncovering the lie, in making it now true, I was able to make some progress in becoming a better version of myself. And in a situation like the one we find ourselves in, there are stories that we tell ourselves about how we can or can't thrive in an environment like this that's upside down, how we are, capable, or we're worthy or enough, or, that we can make it. And so I think the idea of what stories you believe are just such an important and powerful thing anytime, but they're even more important when we're in the midst of something so unprecedented as this, because if you can connect to a story of why you are so capable, why you were so equipped, why you were so able to thrive inside of an environment like this, it'll change the way that you find evidence of that in the way that you walk through your day every day.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, and I can agree with you more. I think you're so right that, first of all, I love the way your book is structured, which we talked about on the podcast. So Dave came on the podcast. If you missed it, go and listen to that episode as well, because we talked for like an hour and a half or something about the book, Get Out of Your Own Way. But in that, the way you talk about the lies, you're so right that the lies right now almost get heightened, like the dial just gets louder. And
Yeah.
we just start saying the worst things to ourselves in a crisis, like, I'm a bad parent. I'm going to be broke forever. This is going to be too hard for me to accomplish. So tell us about some of the lies that you feel from the book that apply most to right now, and how you started breaking through those lies for yourself.
Well, I mean, the one that I would start with is this lie that I believe that some things were possible for other people that weren't possible for me. And we talked about it a bit on the podcast, but the example I give in the simplest way to explain is I had been told this story of how I, as a person who was tall, could not run. And so if you'll go with me just for a second, you can substitute running in whatever is happening in your life for whatever would make most sense in your world. But I was told this story, and I believed it for 36 years of my life, that I was just someone who could not run because of the story that someone else told me through the lens of their fear wrapped as love. My mom, good woman, loved my mother, handed me a story and said, hey, I am worried about your back, your knees, your hips. You shouldn't run. You're a tall person. And for 36 years, I just took her truth as mine without ever testing the hypothesis of my own experience. And then I started running, and running has become a massive part of my life. And so in having to understand, well, why did I assign so much value to that? Well, one, she was a credible source, right? And so the stories that we tell ourselves about why certain things are possible for other people, but not us, sometimes are a byproduct of that story having been told by someone in our life that has credibility. But the question you have to ask, in this example, right, my mother, though she had great intentions, she's neither tall nor a runner. And so as much as she has credibility in my life, she has no credibility on this topic in my life. I can be free from that story and rewrite one of my own. And so here we are in the midst of this environment where there are stories that you may be telling yourself around what is possible for you or what might be more possible for other people. And you have to ask where that story comes from and who the storyteller is and if they have credibility on this topic. I have to ground myself in this time in how many experiences I've had in my past where I was absolutely able to overcome something that felt bigger than myself as a reminder of how much I can overcome. And you, all of you who are listening, have overcome things. You have gone through hard times, and you need to be able to draw now on the stories of that past that make you someone who can overcome whatever it is that we're going through for however long it ends up lasting.
Absolutely, man. Roz the Canadian goes, my two favorites in one place. I just read the book and made a decision to move across the country. How does that make you feel, Dave, when you hear that from your book? I mean, that's amazing.
Let's go. I'm here for it. You know, I mean, I made this decision to leave what I knew for what I needed. I made a very big life change a couple of years ago, and moving physical locale was a big deal for allowing me to fully reset without the distraction of where I was. I wish you nothing but the best. There's something beautiful in starting over in a new space.
Ross, thank you. Darren says, wow, an amazing example for Dave. Thanks a lot for sharing that. So Dave, yeah, I agree with you completely. Like, I think you're so right that we trust certain sources, whether they're teachers, parents, partners, uncles, aunts, whatever it is, you know, we trust all these people. I think one of the biggest challenges, and this is literally, I'm being inspired by what you're saying, and I'm asking you questions that are coming into me very naturally, which I think a lot of people might be thinking and may not be saying, is I think at these times, one of the biggest things is we don't know who to trust. And what I love about your book is that your book, Get Out of Your Own Way, is like a complete focus on how to trust yourself.
Yeah.
Because I think, you know, right now it's like we're looking around, people are like, well, do I trust the government? Do I trust the business people? Do I trust the entrepreneurs? Do I trust, you know, the healthcare system? Like, what can I trust? And your book, almost to me, it feels like a reconnecting of trusting ourselves, because that's something we've left behind so long ago too. Like, I feel like we don't think about trusting ourselves. That's why we think of trusting other people. What are your thoughts on developing trust with yourself, and how you've gone from being someone that doubted yourself based on what others have told you to actually now learning to follow your intuition and your direction?
What's amazing is I started this year with this very bold declaration that this is going to be my best year of my life. Saved it for 45. I'm going to have the best year at 45. I had no idea what, of course, this year was going to bring on, but here I say I'm going to have the best year. And I started my pursuit of my best year trying to understand where pain had existed in my previous years, so that if there was anything in my experience that I could see as consistent variables, that maybe I could preempt pain from happening in my best year ever, which I am in the midst of manifesting. And what I realized in looking back is that pain happened to always be present when there was a disconnect, there was dissonance between who I suggested I wanted to be, who I knew I needed to be to have my personal values fully show up in my life, and who I knew myself to be when I was by myself, right? There was space in between who I knew I wanted to be, who I promised my wife I would be, who I committed to being to my kids, who my team deserves, and who I knew myself to be when I was going to sleep at night. And how we feel about ourselves when we're by ourselves is just about the most important thing in the world. And the distance that exists between who we know we can be and who we actually are, that dissonance, that incongruence, is shame, is guilt, is unfulfilled potential, is us knowing that we could have done better but didn't. And in a time like this, right, it's easier to make excuses. It's easier to feel justified in not showing up as who you know you could, because the world is upside down. It's hard. It's inconvenient. It's scary. There's more anxiety. So you do deserve to have that drink. You do deserve to not show up like with your routines or your habits. But in choosing that, you're maintaining that dissonance between who you know you could be and introducing a pain that when you are by yourself, you will feel. And so, man, I am in this pursuit every day to try and close that gap. And the way that my brain had to try and process the gap closing was a very simple math equation. If then, if I want to show up well in this quarantine, then if I want an exceptional relationship with my wife, then if I want to be close to my kids, then, and the then statements become my list of habits and routines, the things that I have to do every single day to engineer the way that I know I ought to show up. Because in that I can create a centeredness that will not guarantee balance. Balance is not a guaranteed thing. It's an impossibility. But in a centeredness, I'm able to pursue equilibrium on the days where imbalance inevitably shows up. And in this environment, imbalance is showing up every day in ways that I've never experienced, that no one's ever experienced.
Absolutely, man. I couldn't agree more. And Love and Dreaming goes, where can I get that book? I'm from Serbia. So what I've done is I put the link to the book as my pinned comment. Obviously, you can get it on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, online. You know, you can get it pretty much anywhere. I don't think there's any way you can't get it. But I put the Amazon link into my pinned comment. So if you're listening to this conversation right now and you're like, I love Dave, good check. First of all, good feeling to have. I love everything Dave's saying, good feeling to have. And then you're going, I want to read his book right now. Well, I pinned it to the link in the comments. So I want you to know that, because I know sometimes you miss the pinned comment. So I can see a few people asking, say, I can't wait to read this book. It is in there, just so you know. I'm looking for your questions for Dave. I've got a ton more, but I want to see. B. Smith was asking earlier. I want to take your comment, B. Smith. I don't know if you're here, but they were asking, how is our profession? There was a question to both of us. How is our profession being affected right now? I'll go first, Dave, and then I'm happy to hear from you.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, and this is one of the first things that it's been an interesting time, because I feel like the industry or the profession or the service of wanting to help people has been given more of a highlight at the moment. So people are now realizing that their mental health is more important than anything. People are now realizing that their personal well-being, their passionate life, their desire to create more abundance in their life through having multiple businesses or side hustles or ideas, all of that for the first time is getting a real spotlight, because people are in pain and realizing that the safe, secure life that they had chosen isn't as safe and secure as we once thought it was. So there is a big spotlight. However, at the same time, people are in more pain than they've ever been in, and therefore they lack clarity on making the best decisions right now. And so we find a lot of people choosing scarcity. We find people choosing fear. We find a lot of people choosing not to follow their abundance or follow their bliss, as Joseph Campbell would say. So you're seeing that difference where it's like this huge spotlight, and then at the same time people are scared because of obviously what's happening in the world. So in my opinion, it's no different to me what I was doing before this and what I'm doing now, because I'd love to hear from Dave, but I'm speaking on behalf of both of us right now. But for me and Dave, it's like we've been doing this for years anyway, and now we're doing it throughout this time anyway. And yes, I think we're trying to give more of ourselves and be more available. I'm doing daily live meditations every day. Rachel and Dave are doing their 90-day challenge right now. We're trying so hard to give more of ourselves, but really it's the same for us from a mission and purpose and passion point of view. It's just extending ourselves. So that's my take. B. Smith, I hope that answers your question. Dave,
couldn't agree more. I will totally affirm everything you've said. I mean, the headline is, in this world that is so desperately in need of light, anyone who has it, all of us, by the way, if you're listening, you have light. The world needs your light, and the need of that light has never been more acute in the times that we're facing. And so the question ends up being, how can you better bring your light to a world that's desperately in need of it in the midst of this darkness? And so we've been, trying to produce as much as we possibly can in encouragement and in things that will just help, in a world of abnormal, create some normalcy with a little bit of the daily routine, right? You having a meditation every day creates some kind of a routine. Our having an everyday thing for our community, same kind of idea. But also in a world of unknowns, I think one of the things that this event is revealing, that, and maybe some people had a feeling of, but I don't know that most did. This is a gift if you can see it. We lived under the illusion of control that has now been revealed to us as having never been a thing that we ever had. And now that absence of control is revealed, that is a thing that can be a provocateur of anxiety or of fear. And so it requires you then to actually just focus on the things that you can control. And there are a few things that you can, but your mindset, your effort, the way that you commit to habits and routines. And so the work that we're doing, I think collectively, the both of us, trying to focus people's energy and mind on the things that you can control in uncontrollable times, which is frankly all the time. We're just now more acutely aware of it than we were before this all happened to us. No one voted for this, and here we are.
Amazing. Yeah, I'm with you, and I'm glad. It's nice to hear that affirmed, and I think you're so right for highlighting that lack of control that's always been there. Yeah. Like you're right, like we literally control like what we do, and that's about it. And this is the first time you're actually realizing it. Now, I didn't tell you guys this at the start, but I'm telling you now. And this is the what's the right word? This is me rewarding those who are consistent and focused and staying here. So me and Dave have been talking for about 20 minutes right now. And I think that shows a certain level of commitment from everyone who's been listening and watching. And I want you to know that I'm going to send multiple copies of Dave's book out to anyone who tags me and Dave, takes a screenshot of this, tags both of us, so it has to tag at Shetty and at Dave Hollis, has to tag both of us, and share the nugget of wisdom that Dave shared in this call that stood out to you the most. And I'm going to find as many of you as I can, anyone that blows my mind. So there's no limit. I'm not saying there's only 10. There could be 50 of you. There could be 100 of you. I want you, whoever creates an awesome little quote segment of something that Dave said in this, some kind of nugget of wisdom that's going to stay with you, something you're going to practice. Take a screenshot of this as we continue. We're still carrying on this conversation. Take a screenshot. Tag us both. That's the second thing. And the third thing is enter some thoughts or ideas that Dave shared that meant a lot to you. And if you do that, I'm going to send you a copy of Dave's book. Right, and there's no limit.
Let's partner up on this. I'm going to sign a few. I'll sign some and send some. Let's get this. Come on, this is a great idea.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Awesome. All right. I've got more questions to take. I just really want to support you, Dave. I'm like I said. I literally loved your book. I think the way it's written is great. And as I keep saying to you, and I've said this to you multiple times, and if you guys listen to the podcast, Dave used to be a skeptic, and so I want to dive into this next. So Rachel Hollis, if you know who Rachel is, Dave's wife. obviously was naturally getting involved in all of this world and creating all this amazing content and becoming a multiple New York Times bestseller and, you know, saving people around the world and sharing all this amazing wisdom. And Dave was a skeptic. So Dave didn't buy it. And this is what I love about Dave the most. You know, and Dave was just like, you know, and I can think of a lot of men and women that I know that would feel that way if their partner were into self-development or personal growth or whatever you want to call it. And so you may be wondering that too. You may be sitting there for the first time and going, I'm seeing a lot more self-development stuff now. I'm seeing a lot more personal growth. I'm seeing a lot more people doing courses and coaching. I'm seeing a lot of people doing programs and challenges. And you might be sitting there going, oh, but that's a lot of like, that's just the fluff stuff, right? I mean, like right now, I just need to focus on saving my money, you know, just buckling down and waiting for what, you know, so you may be thinking like that. And I think that's a very fair thought. First of all, I just want to acknowledge that. That's not an unfair thought because unfortunately, there are a lot of people out there who take advantage, etc. But there's a difference between self-growth and personal development. So Dave, tell us about what you were skeptical about and what was it that was able to win your confidence in this path?
Yeah, well, I mean, I just had a fixed mindset from the word go. And so the one thing I would just start with is if you are not familiar with mindset generally or haven't read Carol Dweck's book, Mindset, man, it is a fantastic way to understand the difference between people who are more growth mindset oriented and more fixed mindset oriented. I was more fixed. I just was more fixed in the way that I was thinking. And so when someone introduced a way to become better, my skepticism in some respects was anchored to this idea that if I needed to raise my hand and ask for help, I was indicting myself in some way as not being good or enough or worthy to begin with. And so the idea that self-help was for broken people or that development in some way indicted me as not already being good was a barrier for me reaching for the things that would have helped me get further faster. And when I started to feel stuck and this bridge between 30 and 40, I finally was willing to toe dip into some of the spaces like going to therapy, reading some books, sitting in personal development conferences, because I was interested in understanding why. Like if you are listening to this and you feel in any way less fulfilled than you'd like or stuck in some way, the first thing that is necessary is self-awareness. You need to get in touch with why you do the things you do and why you feel the way that you do about the things that you do. And so for me, my decision to slowly wade into this thing that I'd been skeptical about was born out of wanting to understand why. Wanting to understand why, what is it about my wiring? And so sitting on the couch of a stranger in therapy, sitting in the audience of a personal development conference, I had some light bulb moments that fundamentally changed the way I thought about development. And one of those early on, I will tell you, was this connection that exists between growth and fulfillment. In that I had found myself in a spot in my life where I was in a position that looked good from the outside, but not growing as much as I had previously been. And the absence of growth was really something that made the dissonance in my life as bad as it was. And I felt unfulfilled. And in this work decided, you know what, I got to go chase being uncomfortable. I got to go chase failure. Even though I don't like it, it's the way that I'm going to become something better and different. And my ability to use the tools that I was previously skeptical of were the gateway for me to slowly build a whole bunch of things that I now am, I am the most avid advocate of, a thing that, you know, and this is not a terribly long period of time, folks. 3 years ago, I was absolutely like, this is snake oil and it's crazy. And my being a convert is a reflection of how much the tools have worked in my own life. It's a part of why I now do the work that I do.
Yeah, I love hearing that, man. It never gets old. And also I love hearing about how it's actually the feeling that we're unfulfilled that stops us from admitting that we're unfulfilled. Like, it's like feeling like things are not going right is where we pretend it's going right because we're scared of admitting that it's not going in the right direction that we want it to. And it's almost like, you think about it, Dave, and I'm sure you think about this, like, think about 3 years ago, if you didn't change your mindset, where would you be today? Oh. And how would this be affecting you differently? I was thinking about that with a friend yesterday. I was like, God, if this happened to me a few years back, it would have really hit, like, it would have really hit me.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I mean, here's the thing. Some people are very, very motivated by the leverage that comes in projecting a vision of what their life will look like in 5 or 10 years. They can connect to how things being better are motivating for them to make change and do the work and, you know, all of it. And I'm someone that connected a little bit more, a lot more, to a vision of what could happen if I didn't change. Right? Like I could connect to some motivation and some leverage around what not changing might mean. Because at the time I'm turning 40, I could see very clearly this dinner that I was having with my now adult children at 60, right? So I'm 40, my kids are 9, 7, and 4, and I can see 20 years into the future where we're celebrating my 60th birthday party, and that dinner goes one of two ways. Either I've made change in my life, I've done the work, I'm having the kind of progress that is going to have them raising glasses of how proud they are for the way that I showed up for them and everyone else, or there is a dinner where my adult children do not feel compelled to show up because of the way I failed to show up in their life. Wow. And the latter piece, I'll tell you, the latter piece is 100% the thing that on the days I don't feel like it, gets me out of bed. Because I am motivated by wanting so badly to have that dinner table one that's just tears flowing, how much pride for the way that I've shown up. And I don't know whoever's listening, you may be someone who can just connect to the positive, and that's fantastic. But I'll tell you what, leverage is one of those things that you're going to need on the days when you're not motivated, especially if you're not someone who has intrinsic internal motivation like me, right? I have to find ways to create leverage that gives me motivation, that engineers my motivation on the days I don't feel like it, which is all the time.
Yeah, that is such a great answer. Guys, that is the exercise that I want you to do today, right? That's the exercise that I want you to do today, right now. When you finish this live, and once you've ordered Dave's book, I want you to go and think about this. What's your life going to look like if you changed nothing? Because that is something that is very easy to predict. You can look at your family members, you can look at your brothers and sisters, you can look at your uncles and aunts, you can look at the life you're living right now and go, what is this going to look like in 20 years? And it's going to be very obvious. You don't need to use any imagination. You don't really need to have a vision. And I love that advice from Dave, because I think it is hard and it is kind of fiction-like to just be like, how amazing could my life be? And sometimes we don't even believe it. We're just like, oh yeah, I'm just fiction thinking how positive it could be. So it's so important to do that. So please do that. I'm just reading some comments. Sylvia Walker says, that is so deep. The part about how we feel about ourselves when we are by ourselves. I'm trying so hard to learn to become comfortable by myself and with myself. Good for you, Sylvia. Thank you for sharing that. There's a lot of comments coming in. Crisis is the biggest opportunity in self, says Sakya. Thank you so much. Who's this? That's awesome, says Maria. Thank you for sharing, Dave. Okay, great. Oh, wow. So many great comments coming in. Thank you, everyone. I'm loving this. All right, I want to take a few of your questions. So I'm flicking through. Novak, where are you? You just told me, I saw a message from you telling me you're on our live. He's somewhere. Where is he? Novak, do you have a question, or are you just hanging out and listening? Either way, oh, there you are. I appreciate it. It's good to have you here, man. Missing our tournament. Okay. Listener says, leveraging is a tool that we can use to motivate ourselves when we don't feel motivated. Love that. Brilliant. Okay, here we go. Sana goes, what's a quick thing to do when your mind starts to cook stories and the mind takes off? Dave, what do you think? So I think the question is, what's a quick thing to do when your mind kind of like starts to get negative, gets lost in like creating negative stories or thought patterns and kind of takes you?
The first thing I do, good question. The first thing I do is try to understand if the thing I am believing is true or not. Is it true or is it made up? Because so much of our anxiety, so many of the things that we worry about are speculative, possible, sometimes worst case scenario, not actually real things. Sometimes we're reacting to the way that somebody said something about us, thinking we have full understanding of what they were meaning. You have to ask, is this real? Because so often we can be triggered by something and immediately our mind starts running away with us. The first thing is ask if it's real. The second thing is get up and move. Get up and dance. Get up and just moving or changing your physical state will afford you an opportunity to change your mental state. I tend to put on a very specific song from a band called Muse. And it's just like that song comes on, and it doesn't matter what I was thinking. I can shake it off immediately. And so if you can have a standby go-to song that when you feel triggered, you're able to, as you put that on, jump up, move your body for even just 30 quick seconds. It would immediately change the way that you're processing it and help you to get back to something that's a little more real.
Absolutely. Great answer, Dave. I love that. Love the 3 steps as well. I want to give a big shout out to Novak Djokovic, who's watching. Novak, I appreciate you, man. And I'm missing our mini tournament we had, but this is a proof of, so Novak joining this, right? So I've been fortunate enough to spend a lot of time with him. Novak does so much self-work and believes in the process of work. And sometimes you see someone like, talking about me and Dave having this conversation, you look at someone, Novak, who's #1 in the world at tennis, and he's joining this live to listen, to learn, to remind himself what's helping him. And when I speak to him, he's just constantly reading and sitting around teachers and doing his own meditation and doing his body work and strength work and mind work. Like, he really believes that tennis is as much a mental game as a physical game. And believe me, when he's serving at you at 120 miles per hour, you realize how powerful. So just to make you realize that, and I saw a few statements there saying, Jay and Dave, we know this, but we need the reminder. That's the point, that we all know this. It's common sense. A lot of it is, at least, not all of it. A lot of it's common sense. But please realize that there's a big difference between knowing and doing. There's a big difference between knowing and acting. And that is where so many get lost in becoming just for like armchair philosophers, becoming expert debaters and discussion people. But to actually, like, when I first got exposed to meditation to when I actually built up my disciplined meditation habit, there was a big difference. I've known about meditation since I was like 2, right? It's a big part of my religion and my spiritual culture and my parenting and everything. But I didn't start meditating properly till I was 18. So there's a big difference between knowing and doing. And so please never confuse the two. Never switch off or close a book when you read something you know. Ask yourself, am I applying this?
Yeah.
And then ask yourself, am I applying this 200%? Because you might be applying it 10%, 20%, 30%, 50%, but are you applying it to 100%? Now, am I applying it? Am I able to teach it and give it to others? Am I able to share it with others? Am I able to help other people do it? There is always another level, which Novak's demonstrating, Dave's demonstrating. Like, what is the next level? See, there's the level of, I know, I'm just using meditation as an example. Actually, let's take Dave's book. Dave's book is based on the 21 lies we tell ourselves, get out of your own way. So if I say 21 lies, it's like, oh yeah, Dave, I know I tell myself these lies. I know I tell them to myself, Dave. I don't need to read your book because I already know I tell myself these lies. Okay, great. But just because you know you tell yourself these lies, that's not helpful. And so the next step is, okay, I know I tell them. How can I understand them? How can I apply them? And then can I teach people? That's the step that people don't go. Dave, that's what I'm interested by is when you went through your journey, what then gave you the confidence to say, and you do it so effortlessly and beautifully, and so I don't feel it's ever in a preachy way. What gave you the confidence to stand on stage, to dance on stage? By the way, if you've not seen Dave dance on stage, please go check out his videos from the Rise Live events that him and Rachel put on, which look phenomenal. I really want to come to one, but you need to go and watch him dance on stage. What gave you that confidence to go above and say, I'm now going to share this because it's been so powerful to me?
Well, here's what's interesting. When my wife wrote Girl Wash Your Face, which at the time when she handed me the first draft version, I panicked over her transparency and her vulnerability. I did not think it was a good idea. I thought it was a liability to what she was trying to build. And I tried to talk her out of releasing the book. But then I was witness to the power of other people seeing themselves in her stories and the power of how then, in feeling less alone in their struggle, they were able to take some of the tips that she was affording and apply them to her life. And so in seeing that, it changed completely the way that I now see vulnerability as a superpower. And so does it make it a little bit hard at first? Yes. Is it less hard every day? Of course. But if you are someone who struggles, you are very normal. That is not a sign of you being broken or different. That means that you are human. And so my ability to represent my humanity in talking honestly about my struggle is hopefully affording people the chance to see some of themselves in my own struggle, make it totally normal for that struggle to exist. And if I can offer some tips in how I am in the midst of processing those struggles, it might be the trail of breadcrumbs that leads someone to also make some change to stay or get out of their way. Fantastic. That is the whole point of this. I mean, the idea is, how can you afford some light to people? How can you impact people? You might have to start by representing that you, in fact, also, like they, struggle. And so there's a lot of power. Also, every one of the stories that I tell in the book is something that at one point I carried some shame about, to be totally honest, right? And in owning my struggle, I have taken a narrative of shame and have turned it into a platform of power. I am so proud of the things that I have worked through. I am so proud of the ongoing forever process that will be me trying to stay out of my own way. But if you're listening to this and you let shame become part of your story, it doesn't serve you and isn't ever going to afford you that platform of power if you were willing to own the fact that you made some mistakes, but here's what you learned from it and how you've applied those learnings. Now I have power in my story because of how I've taken things I had shame for, been honest about them, and been able to hopefully help other people as I talk about it.
Yeah, exactly. And in the book, everyone, Dave talks about his relationship with alcohol. And he really opens up vulnerably about it. And the important thing in that is, in sharing your shame, as Dave's talking about, is when he shares his, it gives you permission to share yours. And when he shares his and you'll read it, you'll feel like, oh, like, you know, whatever it is for you, it may not be alcohol, it may be something else, but yeah, it gives you that breath. And that's why reading about people's journeys and transformations is so important, because it shows you that there are two sides. It shows you there's the side you're on, there is the other side, and this is what the journey looks like or could look like. I'm reading some great comments. Loving, Laughing, Living says, totally agree on the 80s music. So that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Looking at tons more. Zoology Rick, thank you so much for your positivity. We appreciate it. I saw a really good question I want to ask you. I'm trying to find it. One second. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? It was so good. It was such a good question. It was a long one as well.
I like hanging out with Jay on a Saturday.
Dave, I know, this is so fun, right?
On.
This is so fun. Like, this is why I didn't want to rush it. So just to show you again why Dave is such a wonderful human, I canceled on him twice this week. Not because I wanted to cancel on him, but I've got a ton of stuff happening in my life. We just moved into my apartment. Our pipes burst during quarantine and whatever. So we moved out, we moved back in, and a lot going on. And I just said to him that I knew that we'd have a lot of fun, and I didn't want to rush it, and I just wanted to hang with him properly.
We're hanging.
Yeah, this is great, man. I'm trying to find this. Oh, here we go. Rosalind, this is the question. Change is important, but what if your change has the potential of hurting others? I think that is such a real thing. Yes.
This is a great question. This is a great question. So there is, unfortunately or fortunately, depends on how you want to see it, there is a choice that you get to make in your decision to become the person that the creator of the universe made you to be, that wants you to be, the person you know you can be. As you decide to go on a growth journey, and there are people in your life that are not yet ready for their own, there is the chance that your journey will be triggering or threatening to them. And your instincts, in some instances, will be to try and keep them comfortable, but their comfort depends on you relinquishing your interest in becoming this bigger, better version of yourself. And so it becomes a bit of a binary thing. Do you want to live into who you were put on this planet to be, or do you want to keep the people in your life comfortable? Because it is impossible to do both. And I will argue that there are times when you may be in a partnership and you're ready and they're not. And you want to know, man, how can I get my partner, how can I get my spouse, how can I get my partner to want to be on this journey with me? And the challenge, to be totally honest, is you cannot make someone want to become a better version of themselves. No. They have to make that choice for themselves. And as a person who was witness to my wife having made this decision before I did, hey, she's going to grow every day. She has growth as one of the most important commodities in life. And I was not yet on board. When it made me uncomfortable, she had to decide, am I going to stop growing into who I have been placed on this planet to be, or am I going to do it even though it's going to make me uncomfortable? And she did. And if she hadn't, I would not have been gifted the opportunity to have modeled for me what growth can do in someone's life. And if she hadn't, I would not have myself become curious about the tools that she was using as possibly having application in my life. And that curiosity is the ingredient that you're hoping to produce in the people that you care about. You got to go and become this better version of yourself, if for no other reason than the opportunity that might provoke some curiosity on their end to start a journey themselves, separate from the fact that if you get to the end of your life and you find yourself having kept every person in your life comfortable at the expense of you showing up as who you could have been, oh, I can't even imagine like having to grapple with the regret of not having fully explored all of your gifts because of it potentially keeping some people uncomfortable. But the people are going to be uncomfortable no matter what. Even if you decide to not pursue, you're still going to have people uncomfortable. So if they're going to be uncomfortable either way, you might as well live into your very best self.
I love it. Well said, Dave. Well said. So everyone who's been listening, please, please, please go and grab a copy of Dave's book. Not only are you supporting an amazing person, you're going to get more from it than you're going to put into it. Like, simple as that. Literally, like, you going up, buying a copy, reading it, you're going to get so much more out of it. It's going to help you go through the lies. You may have 21 lies. You may have 24. You may have 100. You may have 4. But the point is, those lies are holding you back. And so figuring that out is going to help you really, really push forward and break through all those boundaries. Dave's great. He was a skeptic. So another great reason to learn from someone who already thought that the majority of this stuff was either a waste of time or fluff or didn't really work. And, you know, he's living proof that it doesn't have to come from a place of like having a particular background or whatever it may be. So please, 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 I can't recommend it more.
Jay, I saw a comment. I want to, if you don't mind, I
Yeah.
saw a comment. Someone had suggested that they're worried of what pursuing their dream might mean to their children.
Ooh,
like how
okay.
it might impact their kids.
Oh, go for it. Yeah.
And
please,
this is one that is interesting in our house, if you will indulge just for a second, because this question of what will this do to our kids we are doing in our professional life and our ambition to try and help people. Rachel, my wife, gets this question in a way that I do not get this question, because it's asked through the lens of, you know, Rachel couldn't possibly be both. Couldn't be both a woman who runs a business and who does work outside of the house and is a good mom.
Right, yeah.
And I got to just say, I have now a 13, 11, and 7-year-old trio of boys and a 3-year-old girl. And the question, if you want my opinion, is what will this do to our children? My children will never for a second question that a woman can be a back-to-back #1 New York Times bestseller, can run a boardroom, can stand on stage and you know, talk to 10,000 people at a time. They are having modeled, my boys are having modeled in real time what a woman can do because of how she is living into who our Creator has put her on this planet to be. And my 3-year-old daughter is watching in real time what it might mean to not apologize for who you've been created to be. So the question maybe is, what will this do to my children if you in some ways deny what you have been given in terms of gifts? It may send them a message that you can't or you shouldn't fully stand into what you've been created. You are creating an example and helping, at least for the boys that you are raising. If you are a woman and you're hearing this, man, your boys are watching how you are modeling what women can do in this world, and they will go into this world as adults, as believers or not, of the things that you've taught. So, man, go for it.
I agree. And I can second that. My mom became an entrepreneur before I even knew what an entrepreneur was. And so my mom is a financial advisor in London, in England, and she quit her full-time job to do that, to be more flexible, to take care of me and my sister. So my mom was more there for us.
Yeah.
And I have so many great memories with my mom growing up. And she had a business that sometimes she would take me out. And this is what I mean. You may not be Rachel and standing on stages. You may be trying to do what your line is. But recognize that even in that, my mom used to take me to appointments in the evening where she would have to go and see clients because that was the only time that they were available when they'd come back from work. And I'd sit there in the corner and just play around while my mom, and then we'd spend time together in the car on the way back. And I had such a close relationship with my mom, and she was busy working and cooking for me and my sister and taking care of us. And so and it was so beautiful for me to see my mom being so powerful and strong and never being too dependent. It was just, I agree. I couldn't agree
Yeah.
more, you know? So yeah, that's beautifully said. We're going to take one more question because it's from Novak, and he's been listening patiently. So Novak said, what is the place in your mind or your being from which you make distinction between what is true or not in terms of your internal experience and feelings? So Novak, what I'm understanding from your question, and I want to get it right, is how do we understand truth and the distinction between what is true or not in terms of your internal experience and feelings? So I'll try first, Dave, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. And Novak, thank you for your question. I look at truth as having three essential components, and I really believe in this. So I believe that truth is first timeless. It's timeless. It has been true since the world started, and it is still true today. That has to be a truth. A truth has to have that value for me. If it doesn't have that as a pillar, it can't be the truth. And so there are very few things that have that. And that's why there are very few things that we as humans can always agree on, because there are very few things that are truly timeless. And that's why I think spiritual texts are such powerful embodiments of those, because they are truly timeless. Like, and especially I'm talking about the uncompromised versions and their essential truths. You'll find so much similarity and coherence in spiritual texts if you look at the essence. So that's timelessness. The second one I would add is that it's universal. It applies to every background, every race, every culture, every minority, whatever you are. Like, it doesn't matter what color of skin you are. It doesn't matter how much money you have. A truth has to apply to everyone. It has to be universal. It can't be segregating, and it can't be sectarian. Truth cannot be sectarian, so it has to be universal. And the third thing is that truth has to be accessible. If it's accessible, then it's true. If it's inaccessible, if it divides people, if it creates an elitist system of yes and no's, then it can't be the truth. And so that's what I go from things that I feel are true, and then I measure them against those three things. And if it doesn't measure, then it may be a truth for me, and it may work for me, and that's totally fine. You're allowed that. It's not you're not allowed. I just can't say it's a truth for everyone. I can't say this is true, right? So, like, for example, you could say that it is possible in a recession to start a billion-dollar company. There's truth in that. But it's not universal, timeless, and accessible. Like, it's not those three things. So I can't say everyone in the world has this opportunity, because that's not true. So for me, that's how I go about it. But anyway, Dave, that's my kind of spiel.
That's good. Man, yeah. That's a good answer. So my truth is very specific to my experience. Yeah. So I tend to take it, we are very regularly talking about what are our personal values, what are our relational values, what are the values we have as a family. And those values in some ways stack on each other, and they change over time based on what seasonally is happening inside of our life. But my truth is when there is that lining up of the things that I have suggested are personal values or relational values in my life, and the way that I am acting to make them come to be. And so I've struggled, if I've ever struggled, I've struggled in taking the way that my dad parented our family and thinking that that was the truth of how you parent. And nope, the way that I parent inside of this house is a byproduct of how I have to parent to make my family values come to pass. The way that my parents, or that Rachel's parents, were married was how they were married. And as much as when I first came into this marriage, I thought that was the way that you were supposed to be married, we are supposed to be married the way that works best in our marriage, that reinforces our relational values. And so my truth comes back to the values that we have inside of this house, inside of this day, inside of this year. And that truth is something that means everything to us and may mean nothing to people outside of us. And that's okay. It's something that may mean something for us today and may change as we are made smarter by an experience, or learn from a different teacher, or have something in our life come up that changes the way that we have values. But I try to find that the dissonance is a thing I'm trying to avoid. Closing the gap and creating coherence is the thing I'm looking for, and that's where my truth sits.
I love that answer, man. It's nice. I was approaching it from like this like, what do you call
Macro,
it?
macro,
Like
micro,
macro level,
right?
and you got into the micro and the deep level. I love it, on the personal aspect. I love it, man. Everyone, Dave Hollis, if you don't follow him, please go follow Dave at Dave
Thank you,
Hollis
Jay.
on Instagram, DAVEHOLLIS. And please go grab a copy of his book. I have pinned the link to the top of the comments. If you can't click on that link, because sometimes Facebook and Instagram doesn't let you do that, all you have to do is type in Dave Hollis into Amazon, or type in Get Out of Your Own Way into Amazon, Dave Hollis, and you will find it. It's a beautiful picture of this beautiful man on the front with Get Out of Your Own
Very
Way.
kind.
So please, please, please go and grab a copy. I support Dave and all his work and everything that he does. And Dave, thank you for doing this, man. This was like, this was fun. This was just
Amazing.
fun.
I so appreciate you, Jay. You are a good man. I appreciate this. I said this on the podcast. I'm going to say it again. Having spent time with you, having been in contact so many times, you are better in real life than you are as you represent on these social media platforms. And anyone who's listening, trust when I say, man, this guy is as good as they get. So thank you, Jay, for your work. It's light, literally, that is necessary in this dark world. So thank you for this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, man. There's a lot of love for us doing stuff together. So I think we definitely need to find a way for us to hang more. I definitely vibe with your ideology and approach, man. So please, please support this man. Please go check out the book again. And thank you, everyone, for joining today. This was a bonus live that we did today. Thanks to Dave, and thank you for Dave. Thanks for being generous with your time. We were talking for like 52 minutes.
This is amazing.
It's been amazing. Yeah,
thanks,
thank you, Dave.
everybody.
Take care, man. Give my love to the family. Oh, and by the way, your videos with your daughter, with Noah, are just the best in the world. Me and my wife like adore them, man. Like we literally just like crush over you two together. So if you also want cute baby videos, Dave is the guy. So
there's that.
Thanks,
all right,
Dave.
thanks,
Take
Jay.
care,
Appreciate
man.
you, buddy.
Bye.
All right.